And Frankie was like, the stars are twinkling really fast. And I just looked at them. Every star that was visible was like twinkling, if you will, but more so than I've ever seen before. And I was like, oh, great. What does that mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of shifting and uncertainty. And I think that there's this atmosphere of fear around it. A lot of times it's perpetuated by people in charge. It's perpetuated by the media. What's going to grab your attention? And then in July, the final one, which is Uranus, moving from Taurus into Gemini. It hasn't been in Gemini since the 1940s.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Reckoning with the Primal Wound podcast, where now I have a co-host basically. It's Jenna Lowe. She's an evolutionary astrologist, and I just feel like it's really fitting for this time to reckon with things that are kind of adoption related, but also this universal chaos zone that we're entering into. It makes me feel better, at least, to talk about astrology, even though I've never been an astrology person. For now, all of this is somehow making me feel better. So if anyone needs to hear from me, the filmmaker behind Reckoning with the Primal Wound, the founder of Foglift and Foglift Events, then this is for you. This episode was filmed and recorded before Saturday, President decided to bomb Iran. But I think that it still tracks because we kind of talked about what is going on in the sky and how it relates and how maybe there's enough collective energy that is positive to get us through this time in a meaningful way where, again, we can build the world that we want to live in, one that is just and equitable and inclusive. And I hope that no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, that you can join us in reckoning with the primal wound and then all things going on right now in a positive, thought-provoking way. I want to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Emma Stevens Writer. I had the privilege of reading her new book, Choosing to Breathe, which isn't out yet, but is coming soon. Highly recommend it. Also recommend her other books, The Gathering Place and A Fire is Coming. I literally couldn't put them down. And then she references both of them in this new book. So if you want to get caught up, it'll make this new book, Choosing to Breathe, more enjoyable. I highly recommend reading all of her books, following Emma Stevens Writer on Instagram. And now enjoy the rest of this episode with Jenna Lowe.
Moving from Taurus into Gemini. It hasn't been in Gemini since the 1940s. So now we're talking about World War II. So we have the Revolutionary War, we have the Civil War, and we have World War II. All of those all at once. And
right. You mentioned that last time, right?
It's easy to say, well, there's going to be a war. It's like,
oh my God, a bird just flew into the window, but it's okay. That's always weird.
Because it's like,
yes, I know. I'm like, what are we saying right now to where like
where's the truth?
At the
same time, it's like, hopefully we've learned something and we can actually move through this in a different way and express these energies in a different way. So your birthday is something like every year, once a year, everyone has a birthday. Like that's a thing. But then there's other things that happen at the same time too. Like at age around 29, everyone does their Saturn return. We had talked about how that's like most popular time for female adoptees to get into.
Oh yes, yeah. I was gonna say that if you weren't gonna say that.
And you're the one that originally told me.
It really is.
Yeah. So like Saturn is all about like identity and maturation and that cycle. So like when everything comes back around and you have to like figure out who you are as a person, like that's a pivotal moment at age right before you turn 30. So like what else would link us more to who we are and our roots and like figuring out that Saturn's also about like boundaries and stuff. But if you think about it as boundaries about like what you actually do want to identify with, like when you're a child, you're like, I play these sports and I want to be an actress and a veterinarian when I grow up, and I want to travel the world and be a chef. Like you start to decide via boundaries, like, okay, where actually is my path? So like that's how, as far as like identity at its core, like the youth of the first 30 years of life, like you're really discovering what it is to be human. And then the second 30 years from age 30 to 60, that's like the adult phase where you're like really building something and you're your most productive and you really have something that you're working towards. And then the third Saturn cycle, like ages 60 to 90, is when you're like participating in lineage. You're like, I need to find someone to give my knowledge to. Older people that start getting a lot out of donating or being like a charitable person. It doesn't necessarily mean just passing down of skills.
So it makes sense. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I'm the way I am.
And what's interesting too is the last time that Neptune was in Aries was during the Civil War. And I mentioned this earlier that Neptune rules film. The Civil War was the first time that humans had, well, depending how you feel about history and ancient stuff, but this was the first time in modern history that we had film and photos. This was the first time that we had that kind of tangible evidence of war. So it was like this challenging of perceptions of reality, or you could think about it as like a new accessibility to the violent realities. And what is the reckoning? It's showing people the truth. Like there isn't a lot of media out there that actually portrays the truth in this Aryan warrior way through film of like what actually is happening. And so it's wrapping up this seeing of violent realities, just like we had at the time with the Civil War, like we're having now, where people are like, what is an illusion? Oh, like the term fake news becoming really popular, like that is very Neptunian. Like, is this real? Is this not? And then also the idea of the adoption narrative and the fact that that isn't reality. So it's like your film very much embodies this Neptune and Aries. First time in history that adoptee filmmakers, adoptee storytellers are actually putting the truth out there in this way that people can't really deny anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of us out there doing that work. So it's like, should we all just flood the zone too? And again, be the leader. Like I feel like adoptees could be the ones marching, you know, towards the White House saying shame.
Yeah.
And actually drive them out. Maybe metaphorically, but why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
Where is that energy that's physical?
Yeah.
And I still don't know exactly what that is, but I feel pulled that adoptees could do something, and maybe it is just waking people up to our message through all the content that we've created.
That ties Saturn in too, because Saturn in Aries, Saturn being this authority figure, this disciplinarian structure, leader, elder vibe. In Aries, the sign of the warrior, courageous, you know, aggression when needed, bravery, all of that. Saturn in Aries is asking, is there anything or anyone in your life for whom you would willingly die? It's like, what is it that you are so passionate about that you will absolutely put everything materialistic, including your life, on the line for that? And a lot of people say like the annihilation. I've already been annihilated. Like this is something that I'm that passionate about. Like my power, my warrior spirit is to bring this truth forward.
The collective consciousness and wanting to build the world like that we deserve, the matriarchy. And it's weird, when the bird happened, I was also trying to Google Melissa Hortman, representative that was murdered. She was an adoptee rights advocate.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like, yeah, that was one of her. Oh, okay. So
Can we do Melissa Hortman's chart?
So if we look at May 27th, 1970 at 12:01 a.m. So like right after at 12:01 a.m. on May 27th, if she was born at that time, the moon would have actually been down here in Aquarius rather than in Pisces. And then the house system is very different. But we can see how like these planets all pretty much stay exactly where they are. The sun, a couple, you know, half a degree. Venus and Mars, very similar. The moon really is what we're looking at that's moving the most. And then anything that's on the cusp of anything, so at like the 29th degree, Neptune moves too slow for it to matter. The houses, though, we're not sure about. So what we can do, though, is pop her in with the now time and look at what is actually coming. Ceres in the sky, that's Demeter and Persephone. Weather of the universe was kind of challenging that Chiron. It's almost like Chiron is the wounded healer. So a lot of that work, that legislature work, could be part of that wounded healing work. It's almost like there was an abandonment challenge. Like maybe there was an abandonment of self around that time where she did let her work kind of take hold of her life and she wasn't caring for herself. So in not caring for herself, letting those things go by the wayside, that can definitely muddy the waters up here, make it a more difficult time. We're starting to see some themes building where the energy in the sky right now very much magnifies a lot of that past life energy for her too.
That is fascinating. Yeah, can we talk more about the energy in the sky right now?
Yeah,
definitely. Last night when we were doing bedtime, and Frankie was like, the stars are twinkling really fast. And I just looked at them. Every star that was visible was like twinkling, if you will, but more so than I've ever seen before. And I was like, oh, great. What does that mean?
Yeah. there's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of shifting and uncertainty. And I think that there's this atmosphere of fear around it. A lot of times it's perpetuated by people in charge. It's perpetuated by the media. What's going to grab your attention? Something that evokes emotion in you. Well, what's an emotion that they very much know how to master and evoke is fear. And that fear emotion playing into the uncertainty that everyone is very aware of right now. Like, you don't really need to be a spiritual person to see the level of uncertainty that is around you. It's very much validated by looking at things through a spiritual, even astrological approach. What is even the next day going to bring? What is next year even going to look like? Like, people feel really uncertain right now. And a lot of that has to do with we are newly experiencing certain energies for the first time in our lifetimes. And these are once in a lifetime transits that are coming through. Pluto moving into Aquarius last year out of Capricorn, there was like this shift when Pluto was in Capricorn, saying like the old paradigm needs to be brought down. That's what Pluto through Capricorn is. The structures, our traditions, things that are from the past, traditional values, traditional, ways of governing, things like that on a big, massive scale, traditional business, all of that. Pluto in Aquarius was kind of rocking that up. Pluto in Aquarius right now is asking us, like, how can we shake up the collective paradigm, everything that we know about society and humanity? And these are going to be unpopular things that are necessarily that need to be done. However, they're for the good of all of us. They're going to feel very foreign, very scary at times. And I think that that's part of the energy that's available that they're using to keep it fear-based, is the fact that Aquarian energy being so innovative, it's like, are we sure this is the right path? So that's kind of setting the stage for all the big moves. And then the next planet was Neptune into Aries, and that was the one that was from the Civil War, where this energy, this spiritual warrior energy, like, we no longer can live in this Delulu realm. We have to put our money where our mouth is and actually push forward and like actually affect this change. And who do we have there helping us but structured Saturn, asking us to really build upon these dreams? Like, what is it that really is the truth that we can go out and Aries fight for? And which
yes, that is it.
Sorry to interrupt this invigorating conversation with Jenna Lowe, but I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor, Emma Stevens, one of my favorite authors. I want to read you my blurb for her upcoming book. It's not out yet, but is coming soon. Choosing to Breathe. Here's what I said. I said, Emma Stevens has done it again because I already love The Gathering Place and A Fire is Coming. In Choosing to Breathe, she masterfully uses her own story to illuminate the often abstract concept of IFS/parts therapy. As an adoptee who's been urged to try it, this book finally made it click. One of my favorite authors offers readers a memorable and profound exploration of trauma, resilience, and the power of breath. A must-read for hypervigilant adoptees seeking to calm their nervous systems and for therapists looking for a relatable way to explain parts work. Please follow Emma Stevens Ryder. She's got a link tree. She's on Instagram. And get ready to get caught up on all of her books. And then keep an eye out for Choosing to Breathe by Emma Stevens, coming soon. Now back to this conversation.
And then in July, the final one, which is Uranus, moving from Taurus into Gemini. It hasn't been in Gemini since the 1940s. So now we're talking the Revolutionary War, we have the Civil War, and we have World War II. All of those all at once. And
right. You mentioned that last time, right?
It's easy to say, well, there's going to be a war. But at the same time, it's like, hopefully we've learned something and we can actually move through this in a different way and express these energies in a different way. I know that there's a lot going on in the world right now that is not pointing in that direction. There's a lot of unrest, so to speak. There's wars. There's people engaging in terror. But the higher path is always available.
I feel like it is just the leaders, like a minority of leaders who are religious zealots. They're Christianity, Judaism, Islam. These are the who are activating the violence. This happens over and over again.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, we see it. Now, I think we have learned collectively that that's not the way. So it's what's going to happen. The people that have the nuclear codes, what are they going to do? We can't really stop them.
Right.
Can we?
Yeah. Well, I think the way that we, as we the people, we the small and less powerful people, can actually affect change is to ride upon that frequency and ride upon these energies in the sky in the most positive ways that we know how. Because as the collective shifts and moves forward in a different way, it's almost going to pull them into the frequency whether they like it or not. It's like when a family starts going to therapy and a couple people start getting better, everyone else, it's kind of like a trickle down of like, oh, well, my situation's actually improving because of them. And then maybe they start to see that path as well and start to maybe take steps to improve their situation, their outlook, their, responses to what's going on too. And it's going to be subconscious in a lot of ways, but it's also it's going to be subtle for a time, and it's going to be slow moving. But that's the idea behind these slow moving outer planets. And so as Uranus shakes things up it's leaving Taurus, so shaking up the structures, the stability, the foundations. When we saw like bridges collapsing and all these structural things happening, it was like, what is going on? And it's like, those can be those type of Uranian shocking upsets that come along and kind of point your attention at where things are going wrong. It's pointing our attention at something that has become completely unmanageable and unhelpful. So as Uranus moves into Gemini, Gemini is fast moving, but Gemini is also about quick thinking and quick communication and learning too. So I think we're going to be, as humanity, coming to a lot of new understandings, new aha moments. Like the ingenious part, the innovative part of Uranus is going to be through our thinking at that time during Gemini, and people will be having a higher understanding of things and a difference of perception that wasn't available to them beforehand. So I'm hoping that as the yous and me's of the world take advantage and use that energy, that the energy becomes so abundant and powerful that it can't help but impart that on our leaders.
That's almost all we have, because our other Congress isn't doing anything. And it reminds me of something I heard today when I was talking to another friend. I was like, I just need it to happen faster. And they were like, okay, you're on human time. You need to be on tree time. And I feel like maybe the transits, what you're saying, the slower transits or the quicker ones, that there has been this tree timeline moving too. And it's just hitting something else. But maybe that is coming to a head, where our only hope of that frequency manifesting into like this overwhelming snowball effect of positive energy that does correct it is going to happen. And we've done it. Like, yeah, there are enough ancestral like energies coming through, the ones of us who are awake and the ones that are here, that it will be okay. And we don't have to do like feeling that foreboding of like, I have to do something right now.
Yeah. Or maybe feeling like you have to perfect whatever it is that you're doing. There's an energy in the sky where it's like, don't become obsessed with the nitty gritty, the intensity, that they don't get caught in the details of what's going on, because you're going to actually miss the fact that overall you are making steady progress. It's like the habit that we have of being discontented. There's that energy in the sky right now of like pessimistic about things, because I can see and I'm getting so frustrated that things aren't getting better fast enough, because I can see it so clearly, and so can so many other people. So why is this taking so long? So it's almost like this obsession or a compulsive desire to keep transforming and keep, edging things a little bit closer to perfect, a little bit closer, when really the higher path here would be to step back and notice the newness of so much that's happening right now, and the fact that there is so much potential for growth. We're talking about planets that are all going to be in the first degrees of a sign. This is like, we don't have the knowledge yet. We need to keep pushing through, because we don't actually know what's on the other side. We need to learn through our experiences now.
Did you see Anonymous's video yesterday? I think they were saying in 17 days something big was going to happen. Did you see that?
July 7th and 6th, when Uranus in the sky actually moves in to Gemini. It's very interesting, because I really like looking at event charts for things. So when Uranus ingresses into Gemini, everything feeling out of balance, everything feeling like disjointed, and that harmony feels very out of reach, like nothing feels harmonious at that moment. But give it that patience, give it that time as Uranus finds its footing in Gemini, and it's almost like this quiet mother figure kind of bringing the wild child in, and the energy is a little bit larger than life, but the patience and persistence that we need in order to tackle this is what's most important. Because if we start to spiral from our emotions and think we see all this doomsday stuff going, the lower expression of Sagittarius being the illusion of clarity, the illusion that you know what's happening, or that you philosophically are solid in what you think you know. You've got to always be questioning it, because questioning things and curiously engaging in them is really the higher path here. So
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Be careful with what we see, and be careful with how we interpret what is presented to us. That's the other side of things. There's a part about all of this where we're talking about, even when the Neptune and Aries, those photos during the Civil War, a lot of them were doctored. Like I recently heard this, they'd bring the bodies back out on the field to be like, well, this is what war looks like. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't, because you literally just moved that person back out there. So it's like, be careful with what you trust as reality. We have AI now. Like that's what we're going through. Like, is that really, this politician saying that? Oh no, brought to you by ChatGPT or, whatever.
Like once you start mistrusting,
Yeah.
it's hard to think we have any control of anything.
Yeah. And when you look at things that have been declassified from decades and decades ago, and then you're like, okay, well, when did the corruption stop? Or did it ever stop?
Did it ever stop?
Yeah. What used to be thought of as things we would never question, and now we're like, oh, that was quietly declassified about, something that happened in the 70s or the 80s, and now we're like, well, wait a minute, back in the 70s or 80s, if you thought that, you were completely out of this world. We get into this space of like, what is reality? Like, how have our perceptions shifted about certain things but not about other things, and how is that lack of continuity being exploited, and how can we become more informed without becoming just parrots, essentially? And then where do we actually have the reprieve from that? Where can we say, you know what, no matter what is true and what isn't true, I also need to take care of this over here. I also need to remember my home and family. I also need to remember self-care. I also need to make space for all of these other parts of my life and not just get whipped up in all of this chaos that's around me. I'm not saying completely dissociate from it. Like, there is the human condition. We want to help our humanity. We don't want to see people suffering abroad. We don't want to hear about war in the Middle East, but it is our responsibility to be aware of what's going on so that we can impart healing and help in whatever capacity feels right for us.
Yep. Yeah. And even if the government has been murdering the light bringers like Martin Luther King Jr.
That quote from Mr. Rogers, where he's like, look for the helpers. Martin Luther King's energy, that's a helper. It's still here. It's still helping. Like, he definitely was helpful when he was here on Earth, don't get me wrong, but there's something to be said about the fact that he was martyred by whoever that killed him, and that almost afforded his energy a more infinite impact, because it was frozen in time in a certain way, so that we can always tap into that situational rage and anger and injustice and use that to fuel our fight for justice today.
Exactly. It's almost a gift. And so they can't win if they keep using violence and trying to silence everybody.
Yeah.
I hope. Oh my gosh, this is so encouraging. Literally, the foreboding is real. Last week, we talked about how I was going to maybe put the film up for free.
Yeah.
I did, last weekend. And I didn't expect anything, right? I wasn't expecting like 1,650 people to watch it.
Wow. That's incredible.
Which is cool to see the potential demand, because I feel like it kind of maxed out. But I think it was because there's no marketing. I don't do anything. It's just word of mouth. Just knowing that people do want to see it and that it could help people is going to inform like how I market it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that just knowing about it, the accessibility of it, there's ways for people to view it, whether they were able to take advantage of it this weekend, but it's more about knowing that it's there and knowing that this is a resource. I did see it linked in the Fireside adoptee chat group. I saw people saying like, it's free this weekend if you guys want to. So I saw some like
a lot of people shared it. And I also didn't expect that. People don't want to pay for film or music. Like, I know that. The question I have is, should it just be free?
Should it just be? That's such it's such a loaded question, because I'm an economics person way back in the day. So I know there's no such thing as a free lunch. Even if you give a free lunch to your employees, somebody had to pay for that. Like, you have to, so it's like, it's not really free. You would just be taking on the entire cost because you're the one who made it and produced it and did all that labor. So there's no like exchange of energy, reciprocity there. However, I know that like there's certain spaces for adoptees where it's like adoptees have access at either a discounted rate or a free rate, and then other people in the adoption constellation are the ones that actually are paying to participate in different things. There's so many different ways to navigate it. And it's like, which one is the perfect equilibrium of honoring and helping assist in the healing that can come from accessing certain things like that, like the documentary or certain services, but then also honoring the fact that there is emotional, physical, mental labor involved in creating and offering these things.
But
So.
maybe so how do you have the most impact? And if it's just free, and then we have a bigger platform to talk about Norma Jean and whoever needs to be talked about, is that worth it?
Yeah.
It's hard to know.
That's such a good point too, because there's also something I want to tie this into a transit going on in the sky right now. That's a long transit, but it's Neptune entering Aries this year. So it's at 2 degrees Aries. It will ingress back into Pisces when it's retrograde at the end of the year, but just for a touch. Neptune likes being in Pisces. It's modern ruler of Pisces. It wants that mystical, ethereal, imaginative energy. It, just like it in your chart, really likes being in the 12th house. Like that's the natural house that it wants to be in. But then with Saturn, like these feel like opposites, because Neptune's like this dreamy, spacey, compassionate, whereas Saturn is Capricorn. It's structure, it's building things. It's not very emotional. It's more about like doing the things you don't feel like doing. So from Saturn's point of view, Neptune is kind of flaky, but whereas Neptune sees Saturn as kind of like materialistic and like kind of like ancient thinking. So you're coming at it in this really authentic way of like, hey,
Wow.
more Saturnian about this, or am I going to be more compassionate and Neptunian about blending of these two mega planets that kind of don't really see eye to eye, Neptune and Saturn, but they're together right now. They're in this kind of forced marriage of the cosmos, working together. You need to work together right now. So the spiritual kind of shock treatment that's awakening this urgency and how important it is for us to take it seriously. There's a huge spiritual component to it, and it's kind of like the question you're asking about, should this just be free? That is a spiritual question when you get right down to it, because you're asking from a place of higher consciousness. Like what is the best path here? What is most effective and efficient?
And then answering that with the 2 days and 48 hours, if you can reach almost 2,000 people, that's, it's like the answer, maybe.
Yeah. Don't make it free indefinitely, because it's like,
yes,
it's interesting too, because like with Jupiter too in Cancer in the sky, and it's going to be coming across your North Node here, like this year. This is going to be a year-long transit. So Jupiter moving through Cancer, it's about wise wanting and wise wishing, like really taking the time to figure out what it is that you want. Jupiter is traditionally associated with luck and abundance and good fortune. It's got this like Santa Claus jovial vibe to it, but you need to really know what you're asking for, because in a way it's like, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it.
Yeah.
So knowing it's like, okay, well, what is my goal in this situation? What is it that I actually want to impart here? And then because it's Cancer, it has to have this Cancer quality to it, which it does sound like your goal in the situation is aligned with healing. You're not saying, I want to become the most famous person in the world, that's why I'm going to make it free. You're saying, what is going to most effectively heal my community?
Oh yeah, 100%. And you can't even think about it with money, because over 1,000 views is like $10,000, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not even going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about fame or money at all. The verdict's in that people like listening to you and think you're interesting to listen to and hear everything you're saying. So
Yay.
For the feedback, y'all.
So we didn't really wrap this conversation up in a way that makes any sense. And I don't know why I'm talking about whether or not I should make them film free forever. Do you think that I could make any sort of living? Could I put any food on the table with just fog lift? If so, maybe I could just put the movie out there for free indefinitely on YouTube. Switch it to being public. Weigh in the comments. And since it is post-Saturday, after we've decided to instigate more turmoil in the Middle East, though I do believe that the people of Iran deserve better leaders. I think that most people want to live in peace, and we can cohabitate. If we could focus on our shared habitat instead of violence and power and greed, that would be really cool. I think that everyone that's alive right now is alive now because the majority of us can steer us back into a more sustainable direction and build the world, again, that we deserve, that is equitable and diverse and inclusive. And this podcast is a way for me to talk about it more. And I would love to build the community. If you want to share this with anybody, if you want to sponsor the show, if you want to comment, you know how they always say, rate, like, share, subscribe. All those things do help if we are trying to get the word out. So I appreciate all of the support, and you can always reach out to me at info@reckoningwiththeprimalwound.com. I'll put all of the information in the show notes. And until next time, I don't have a tagline. So, yasas. I'll just keep speaking Greek.